Hi guys, my name's Tisa and welcome to this week's No Now News. Okay, so for the headlines. Serbia and Kosovo reach historic accord. Pakistan's Musharraf appears at anti-terrorism court. Mugabe officials bar UN mission from Zimbabwe. Second Boston bombing suspect captured alive. The US Senate rejects gun background checks. Okay, so I start with Serbia. Basically this week, Serbia and Kosovo in Brussels signed an agreement that will normalize relations between the two. Years and years ago, towards the start of the millennium, Kosovo had been part of Serbia, but then they broke away and formed their own independent state. But Serbia has never recognized Kosovo's sovereignty. And on top of that, the northern part of Kosovo is majority Serbian, and so they weren't happy about being separated from the motherland. And so in the northern part of Kosovo, there's been a lot of sectarian violence, a lot of fighting. It's kind of failed to integrate with the rest of the country, and this has really impacted Kosovo's ability to actually stand on its own as an upright independent state. But after meeting in Brussels, it's looking that Serbia is going to kind of end its de facto rule over Kosovo. It's going to officially relinquish it. Why is it going to do this? Because this way the EU will open up discussions, or rather will allow Serbia eventually to become part of the EU. And this offers Serbia so many economic benefits. Already there's whispers on the market that it has the potential to be the largest market in that part of Europe. And Kosovo, on its own, it's also playing pretty fair. It has said, with these agreements, it has stated that it's going to give the northern part of the country, the part that's majority Serbian, some semi-autonomy. That means they'll be in control of their own police, their own education, their healthcare system. And so I think that's pretty fair. I mean, right now it's not 100% concrete because Serbia still has to take the agreement back from Brussels to Serbia for the government to check and agree with. But we're not really seeing any obstacles to this because they want to become part of the EU. They want to enjoy the economic benefits. So there's a lot of reasons to be very optimistic about this, and can just cross our fingers and hope for the best. Okay, so Pakistan's Musharraf appears at anti-terrorism court. Right, this is quite the story. So Musharraf, who was Pakistan's former president, has returned to Pakistan after 4 years in exile. He returned in the hopes of being Pakistan's savior. And what has happened is that so far his return home has just been blow after blow. First of all, a tribunal met together and decided that he was disqualified. He was not able to stand for upcoming elections. And now, to make matters worse, he's actually been arrested. So in court on Thursday, he was arrested. Why was he arrested? Because back when he was president, he had put 2 judges under arrest, suspended the constitution, and declared a national emergency. And so, you know, this kind of called for mass protests. People were really unhappy about it. There was violence, there was protests left, right, and center. And it's because of this that he had to step down and flee the country. But now he's back in Pakistan and he's being tried over these, and they're charging him with this. I mean, the scene in court that day was very interesting. He was arrested, but instead of turning himself in, he ran into his SUV and sped off, and that is how he managed to avoid being arrested immediately. But they still got him the next day, which was yesterday, and so now he's in custody. His lawyers have managed to arrange for him to be held in a hotel at the outskirts of the city, and there's talks that he'll be transferred back to his house pretty soon. But he is going to be tried, and I'm not entirely sure why, but he's being tried in an anti-terrorism court because apparently his actions as president were terrorist attacks. I'm not really sure. I mean, I find it really confusing. Who even told him to come back? Because he knew if he came back this would happen. He knew if he came back he would be arrested. He'd face going to court. So I wonder, maybe he had miscalculated his popularity. Maybe he thought he had a lot more support back home than he did in real life. And I mean, to be honest, he hasn't really seen much support. There's been no excitement, no chatterings. At the airport, he only managed to draw a crowd of about 1,000, which is really small compared to what happens in Pakistan. That's peanuts. So, I mean, it's really unfortunate for him. He comes back home, tries to take the country back, tries to save the country, only to see that no one's interested in him anyway, and he's been, you know, languishing in jail. Well, not in jail, but his motel. So we'll just have to keep our eyes open and see where this goes. Okay, on to the next one. Mugabe officials bar UN mission from Zimbabwe. I mean, it's pretty interesting, and I don't really understand much of it. So basically, as we know, Zimbabwe has no money whatsoever. They're broke. And towards the start of the year, they had really made such a push for democracy, and they held a referendum which changed the constitution so that no president could stand for longer than 2 terms. I mean, it's not retroactive, which means that Mugabe could still be there pretty much until he kicks the bucket. But it's still a push. It's still, you know, a big move for democracy. The fact that they were able to come together and discuss their constitution and change it, that is very, very big progress for Zimbabwe. But the downside to that is they really had no money to hold those elections. They had to get money from, I believe it's an investment firm called Old Mutual, and it was about $40 million. And even that, it wasn't really their money. And now they're holding some more elections, and parliamentary elections actually, and they have no money whatsoever for it. So previously, Mugabe had written to the UN to ask for funding for these elections, and they complied. They said, yeah, we could give you the 132 billion you're asking for, on the condition that we send a mission, we send an envoy to talk with your electoral commission, to talk with your registrar, just to see that things are in place, just to see that there are the makings for a free and fair election. And this is standard procedure, and Zimbabwe readily agreed to it. It says, bring your mission and bring your money, that's okay. But then the UN went further to state, actually, we're going to have to talk to some of your civic groups, we're going to have to talk to some of your pressure groups, and for some reason this threw Zimbabwean government threw Mugabe into a spin, and it's, oh, why are you coming here to talk to our civic groups? Why are you talking to our pressure groups? You're trying to influence people, you're trying to interfere. And so after hearing that, Zimbabwe changed its mind and said, actually, the UN, you cannot come, go back and take your money with you. And so not only has Zimbabwe lost out on the chance to have elections monitored by the UN, it's also missed out on the chance to have any money for the elections. I mean, at this point in time, it's had to appeal to some of its neighbors to get money, and so far South Africa has obliged. They have given them some money, although not nearly as much as the UN would have given them. I just think it's really sad, because at the start of the year, when they had made a change to the constitution, it looked like you're taking 2 steps forward. But I suppose it's a reflection of politics in Zimbabwe. Just, oh yeah, we'll grant you your wish if it agrees with us. Yeah, you can have a new constitution as long as Mugabe can still stand in the upcoming elections. Oh yeah, you know, you can bring the UN people as long as you don't talk to the pressure groups. I think it's really unfortunate, because all of this, it doesn't really hit the people at the top, it hits the people at the bottom more, and they suffer. And you know, things have been going great, especially because the EU had dropped some of the sanctions against Zimbabwe from after they had made the changes to the constitution. But when they look at this, unwillingness to kind of cooperate with the international community, do you really think they'll be so quick to drop these sanctions any minute a slight change is made? No. So once again, it's the little people at the bottom that are suffering. Okay, so on to the second one. The second Boston bombing suspect has been captured. He's 19 years old. I'm going to struggle with his name. I'm going to try. It's Zoskat Sernov. Sorry, I tried. He came with his family from Chechnya in the early 2000s. And it's really interesting, because a lot of the people that were interviewed said that he'd shown no inklings of extremism. It came as a shock to these people. And incidentally, the first suspect that was murdered was his brother, Tamiran, who was 26 years old. And I think something I found particularly unsettling was that their mother kept insisting there was no way the boys were capable of this. She insists that they were framed. She insists that they couldn't have been able to make these bombs. And I mean, that actually poses a lot of questions. But it doesn't change the fact that this is really sad. These boys were so young, 26 and 19, sorry, and it's just really sad when young people find themselves implicated in these things. So our thoughts go out to those who lost loved ones in the Boston bombings, and we just hope that we can get to the bottom of this and find out who is corrupting all of our young men, who is corrupting